Long ago in a distant land, Cartoon Network, the monolith of television animation, unleashed an unspeakable amount of cancellations. But a foolish animation producer wielding a magic show stepped forth to oppose them. Before the final episode had aired, Cartoon Network tore open a portal in time and flung the show into the future, where it lay dormant for years. Now the show seeks to return to its fans and undo the tragedy that was Samurai Jack. Everybody calm down, this is not a drill, this is real life. It's actually happening, guys! If you couldn't tell from my convoluted intro, Samurai Jack is finally coming back. After well over 12 years of keeping us in suspense about the fate of our favorite stoic samurai, Adult Swim has taken up the task of giving the show the proper conclusion we've been desperately hoping for. So let's take this time to re-examine the epic story of the foolish samurai warrior and his quest to return to the past. But is that really what it is? It's not like Jack hasn't already had the opportunity to return to his own time. He has. Quite a few times, actually. In fact, based on some of the actions we've seen Jack take in the past, by which I mean future, a couple of questions have made themselves apparent. Is Jack purposely sabotaging his mission to return home? And if he is, what's his reasoning? Alright, I already know what you're thinking. But Jacob, the theme song! The lyrics are literally "gotta get back to the past, Samurai Jack." How could you possibly suggest that 2/3 of the theme song are a lie? And it's actually probably a bigger fraction, since Jack isn't really his name. Well, have you ever noticed just how often Jack's been a stone's throw away from a time portal ever since being flung into the future by Aku? While he's not exactly drowning in them, Jack has definitely had ample opportunity to return to his home if he actually wanted to. To name some examples, take a look at episodes like Jack and the Traveling Creatures, Jack the Monks and the Ancient Master's Son, or Jack and the Labyrinth. These are just 3 opportunities in which Jack is probably closer to his goal than at any other point in the series. In the first 2 episodes I listed, Jack is standing right in front of 2 different time portals but doesn't take advantage of the opportunity. And in Jack and the Labyrinth, Jack came into contact with a diamond that apparently held the power to end his quest. And yet, the show continued. Now, to be fair, in 2 of those episodes, there were outside circumstances that stopped Jack from getting the job done. But in Jack the Monks and the Ancient Master's Son, there was literally nothing stopping him. Jack made a conscious choice to not travel back in time in favor of helping the 2 monks who escorted him to the portal. Which, okay, I can respect that. Jack's a good guy. But if Jack goes through a portal and stops Aku from taking over, wouldn't he be saving everyone anyway? If Aku never rises to power, this changes the entire future. Which means that those monks wouldn't have been about to die, so what gives? Why would Jack go for the short gain here rather than actually fulfilling his mission? Well, one thing this theory focuses on greatly is that we have absolutely no idea how time travel in Samurai Jack works. In every piece of fiction, time travel operates under a different set of rules. The most straightforward way it's usually represented is when there's only one timeline and everything from the past directly affects the future, like in Back to the Future. But there's another possibility that this theory suggests, and it's our good friend, alternate timelines. Now, we're not going to dwell on the idea of alternate timelines or multiverses too much in this episode. We've been covering them extensively lately for some reason. But it's worth mentioning that this theory suggests that part of the reason Jack chooses not to travel back in time is that by going back and defeating Aku, he may not overwrite his current timeline. Only create one where Aku never ruled, but the timeline he left won't have actually changed. It's kind of like when you beat a video game and then you start a new save file in a new slot so you can see what all the different endings are going to be, or what color explosion will occur in the last cinematic. Both save files are still intact. The only difference is which one you choose to experience. So if this is the idea, Jack wouldn't be saving anybody but himself. So with all that in mind, let's take a look at the upcoming season of Samurai Jack. We see a much more grizzled and tired and bearded Jack. And with all the time that has passed, he seems resigned to the fact that his quest will never end. He even vocalizes this feeling in the trailer by saying things like, there's no way home. There's nothing to fight for. Obviously, trailers tend to take things out of context, but even so, this is a troubling quote from Jack. He's not exactly a public speaker, so him putting in the effort to verbalize things like negativity or hopelessness is a bit worrisome. Could this be because he's given up on returning to the past? Although in that same trailer, Jack quotes the theme song saying, "Gotta get back to the past." So how does this theory account for every instance of Jack saying he has to get back to the past anyway? I mean, you could say Jack is speaking metaphorically, and he's actually saying that he must return Earth to how it was before Aku took over, but then why would he actively seek out time portals? Well, the theory suggests that it's to draw out Aku and his allies. Jack knows he's always being watched, to some degree, and by reaching portals, he would know that Aku, or his minions, are there with him, waiting in the shadows, ready to strike. And every time they meet, Jack would learn just a little bit more about his greatest enemy, which would hopefully culminate in Aku's destruction. On the surface, this theory is pretty intriguing. It would also explain why at the beginning of the 5th season, Jack still hasn't returned to the past despite 50 years of being stuck in the future. And it's also incredibly sad, assuming that Jack would forever be a man out of time because by going back to the past, he wouldn't actually be saving anyone. But even with all of this talk about alternate timelines or general hopelessness, I think there's one more way we can look at this. So Jack, as we all know, is a samurai. Hard-hitting stuff, I know. But since he is a samurai and not a scientist or a science fiction connoisseur, can we be confident in saying that the reason Jack doesn't go back in time is because of the possibility of alternate timelines? Would something like that even occur to him? Jack seems like the kind of guy who's happy to use time travel, but like most of us, has no idea how it works. With that in mind, there might be a much more reasonable explanation to why he hasn't yet returned to the past to destroy Aku. And it all comes back to his philosophy. Samurai, as we're familiar with, were a mainstay of the Japanese military from about 1,000 years ago to around the end of the 19th century. So naturally, there's a long and storied history of the samurai's role in Japanese politics and military. We were actually thinking about doing an episode about how Jack and Aku could be representations of Japan's different historical ideologies, but that might be an episode for another time. What we're instead going to focus on is how the samurai conducted themselves. The samurai code of conduct, or bushido as it's also known, is somewhat similar in concept to chivalry, the code of conduct that the medieval knights of Western Europe were known to follow. However, these codes of conduct vary pretty wildly. Bushido is largely a mix of several different schools of thought, things like Buddhism, Confucianism, or Shinto. In the tiniest of nutshells, the basic idea behind this was to level out the violent nature of the samurai with things like wisdom and balance to keep from, you know, the samurai being ruthless, sadistic maniacs. Though to be fair, most codes of conduct are there to stop humans from becoming ruthless, sadistic maniacs. Now, there's a lot of debate on the specifics of Bushido since it was a rarely documented or regimented thing. Most of the disciplines and skills of a samurai were taught from a mentor to a student, and many aspects of the samurai code of conduct were both unwritten and unspoken rules. And on top of that, depending on who trained you, you might be trained in different disciplines. But one of the most widely known documentations of Bushido comes from the book Bushido, The Soul of Japan, written by the late 19th and early 20th century Japanese author and politician Nitobe Inatsu. While this book was initially written in English and intended for Western consumption, it was one of the first mass-produced texts that tried to capture the essence of the samurai code of conduct. And in this book, Nitobe attempts to condense Bushido into 8 core tenets. They are righteousness, heroic courage, benevolence or compassion, respect, integrity, honor, duty and loyalty, and self-control. With these 8 tenets in mind, is Samurai Jack as much of a master samurai as we've been led to believe? Or is he actually just a foolish samurai warrior? Does he possess all of these characteristics consistently? Well, let's take a look at those previously discussed opportunities that Jack has had to fulfill his destiny. Firstly, in Jack and the Traveling Creatures, Jack isn't able to enter the time portal as it's protected by a massive guardian who absolutely wrecks Jack in battle. But before absolutely destroying him, the guardian gives Jack 2 opportunities to walk away, which Jack refuses. To relate this back to Bushido, the tenet of heroic courage comes with an interesting caveat. Heroic courage is not blind. It is intelligent and strong. Jack's unhinged, impulsive behavior at this crucial moment seems to contradict this idea. And what's more, just before killing him, the Guardian sends Jack away as he realizes that he is not ready to defeat him. At this point, the viewer is shown a vision of a much older, much more grizzled Jack, similar to the one we saw in the Season 5 trailer. So this would seem to reinforce that Jack's self-discipline is a major factor in his quest. Later, in Jack the Monk's and the Ancient Master's Son, Jack once again comes face to face with a time portal. He even starts running towards it and then decides against it, saving those two monks that were about to die, all while fully aware that his window to return to the past was limited. But what's more eye-opening is when he explains his reasoning for such actions. He says to the monks, "You were prepared to give your lives. I was not." Many tenets of the Samurai Code of Conduct line up with what Jack is saying here. Things like compassion, benevolence, integrity, honor, basically the whole list. Hiding like a turtle in a shell is not living, nor is abandoning your brothers in any circumstance. Both Jack's words and actions show us that not only is he aware that he must discipline himself more before taking on the Master of Darkness himself, but that he's also doing his best to maintain these tenets. To him, conquering these is just as important as being physically prepared. Now, what about Jack's diamond in Jack and the Labyrinth? Well, the diamond that Jack seeks is shattered at the end of the episode, and all signs point to this being a result of Jack's hubris. According to Nitobe's writings on Bushido, a true warrior does not need to prove their strength, and their skills in diplomacy must be as honed as their skills with a blade. And to put it lightly, Jack isn't exactly a diplomatic mastermind in this episode.
This isn't yours. Yes, it is. No, it's not. 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 Yes, it is. No, it's not.
And in the end, the diamond shatters due to damage caused by it through the incredibly long show of force displayed by Jack and his rival, by way of their rousing chase scenes throughout the episode to both claim possession of the diamond and assert their dominance. Throughout the run of this series, Jack fluctuates greatly on how well he's able to follow each of these tenets of Bushido in basically every category. And maybe this is what's actually keeping him from returning to the past. He can't go back yet because he's not ready. And he knows it. And this would be a really nice marriage of our original theory and what we've learned today. However, with all of this talk of Bushido and how Jack may not be ready to defeat Aku, there is one thing that throws a wrench into this line of thinking. Based on the show's intro, which is narrated by Aku, Jack was flung into the future before the final blow was struck, which would imply that at the very beginning of the show, Jack was more than able to take out Aku. But this whole line of questioning is kinda weird. If Jack has had the one weapon that's capable of destroying Aku since the very beginning of the series, that would seem to negate any sort of personal growth or discipline that he would have to endure, effectively eliminating any need for Jack to have any sort of character arc throughout the series. And while that's definitely something to consider, maybe Jack's emergence in the future was some sort of metaphorical rebirth. Maybe the sudden change of environment completely broke him and forced a master reboot of his brain. Maybe because of this dramatic displacement, he has to relearn everything he once knew in order to build himself up to being the warrior that he once was in the past. And I have one last point which is totally silly, but I have to throw it in. If Jack goes back to fight Aku, who's to say Aku's not going to pull the exact same stunt? I mean, yeah, he could just dodge the attack, but could you imagine if Jack went through all that trouble just to be sent back to the future again? That would just be inconvenient and rude on Aku's part. Wait a minute, the more I think about this, why hasn't Aku pulled the exact same stunt? My god, could you imagine if that's how the new season ends? Aku just flings Jack a few hundred years more into the future, roll credits. There would be riots. So with all of these ideas about alternate timelines, the overall weight of Jack's situation, as well as Jack's own ability to adhere to the tenets of his philosophy, where does that leave us? Well, to me, it doesn't seem crazy to think that Jack may be biding his time, practicing and perfecting his Bushido disciplines before he's ready to defeat Aku once and for all. It also ties together pretty much every instance of Jack being near a portal, as each time he's shown to be within the grasp of victory, his own limitations have stopped him from fulfilling his destiny. But at the same time, it's difficult to say that Jack is sabotaging his mission to go back to the past. In the show, the only time Jack has intentionally stopped himself from going back in time was in Jack the Monk's and the Ancient Master's Son. So there seems to be a little bit of push and pull between whether the world thinks Jack is ready to defeat Aku and whether Jack thinks Jack is ready to defeat Aku. With that in mind, I'm going to rate the conspiracy of Jack sabotaging his own mission to go back to the past 2.5 sandals out of 5. But what do you think? Do you think the only thing keeping Jack from returning to the past is himself? How hyped are you for the return of Samurai Jack? And what's your favorite episode of the show's original run? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And also be sure to leave us any conspiracies you'd like us to take a look at a later date. Until then, don't forget to like this video, and if this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe to ChannelFrederator for all sorts of awesome stuff, including more cartoon conspiracies. And remember, Frederator loves you.